Welcome to Beyond the Gates 2025. This is on Rauta channel. As you know, I'm your host, your friend, and who knows what, Jerry, the part-time alcoholic. I am kidding, obviously. We're having coffee here, not drinks. But this time, this is worth mentioning. Today's guest is, I think, in so many ways, the most important interview of the whole event, even though they are not playing here. And you will soon find out why. I'm not going to explain it here in the intro. So let's introduce the man of the hour. Sir, please state your name and what are you doing here with me?
Well, my name is Shayan. I'm from the band TRIVAX, originally formed in Iran and now active in the UK and, of course, playing various places across Europe and the world. And I also host a podcast called Iblis Manifestations. And on top of that, I'm also a fitness coach at Trial by Fire. And Jerry, my man, it's an absolute fucking pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you for having me. And thank you for the kind words as well. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. Now, what people need to know, usually I don't talk that much to the camera, but in this case I will. We're going to talk some things that people might feel, oh, that's too far, that's too insensitive or stuff like that. So if you're one of those that can backpedal, consider dangerous or whatever, or talking about religions, maybe it's a good time to shut off and, I don't know, Coldplay or Disney figures, because we're going to challenge a little bit of the religious topic today. But first and foremost, we're going to talk about the man in question, the band, and all these various topics, which leads us to the very triangle of things. You are obviously first and foremost the band guy for a lot of people out there. And of course, that's how a lot of people know you or follow you. But it's, I guess, equally important that you do this podcast, which is, I guess, a whole nother angle for a lot of people, how they know you. And then you did indeed have this fitness coach thing, which are all separate channels in a way on social media. Nowadays, everything has to be separated. Like banding is one thing, podcast is another one, and so forth. What I'm asking here is, how do you manage the priorities between the band and the podcast, and that combining with obviously, private life apart from that?
That's actually a solid question, and I don't think I've ever been asked that before. It's kind of an obvious one, but I don't think this is something I've ever actually elaborated on. So as far as the band is concerned, yeah, as you said, I am, I guess, supposed, in a way, the face of the band for many reasons. And I do compose most of the material and have done for the entirety of the band's existence. Of course, going back to when we used to be active in Iran, I think forming in the spring of 2009 originally as an actual band. Before that, I was just kind of on my own. And yeah, to me, everything that I do comes from a sense of need, With the podcast, that also kind of has this artistic element to it, because I think that sometimes people look at it and see the whole area of content creation, which I can see why people might sometimes think that that's something that might not have a lot to do with the essence of this music. But actually, for me, I find myself being quite far removed from tracking views and things like that. But to me, the thing that matters is the essence of the conversation and the guests that we bring on the show, or even some things that I personally feel a necessity to really put out there, the perspective that sometimes people will agree with and sometimes people will feel challenged by it. And that's okay, because that's exactly the same approach I take with music as well, And I think that there's like a core connection within that, that I think is kind of the most important thing that I guess I'm kind of looking for unintentionally sometimes, because if you think about it, most of us who listen to this form of music, we all have our own individual experiences as we are going through this. And we all have our own journeys in life and how we got to that point, how you got to the point of maybe discovering Black Sabbath for the first time, and then that led you to listening to Mayhem and all of that, okay? We all kind of go through that in our own ways. But I think that, for example, if you go to a live show, that's where everyone will then connect with each other. It's like, oh, wow, that other person has the same kind of thing. Comes from a totally different background, but we have this mutual connection. I think the podcast kind of facilitates a similar connection, where simply by listening to two people who might have different backgrounds, but discussing things that you might be interested in, it just lets you know that, first of all, you're not on your own, okay? I think that's an important reminder. to have within what we go through, because I think the world out there can make people feel very isolated and kind of like it's just you versus the world. And sometimes that may be the case, you know, but I think that reminder is a nice thing to be out there. So just to answer your question, as you're saying, like, how do I balance all of this? Well, to me, I think, you know, I live a very, how should I say? I try to optimize my time as much as possible. I don't watch Netflix. I don't drink on weekends, as you know, and I basically am full work mode all the time, which, by the way, I know you're full work mode all the time and you still drink, you know, so when I'm saying this, I'm not even casting judgment on anyone else who's different. But this is for me, this is my trajectory, is that I appreciate that time is limited and I just want to do as much as I can, you know, and not all just for the sake of a legacy either, but purely because I do genuinely believe in at least trying to make my surroundings a better place and also simultaneously trying to become a better person at the same time and a lesser piece of shit, basically. You know, it's a constant journey. I'm not perfect at it, you know, but I am trying. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question at all. But
I guess it kind of does.
yeah.
People need to understand, that it mentioned me in this kind of a tennis match, is that, yeah, I know how it is, because, for example, some people think that, you know, doing Rauta is like something like a day job, and I'm like laughing at it. Do you think we're actually making money? It is like, so there's day job, there's running the channel, there is this powerlifting regime, there is, of course, band stuff, there is family stuff. Then you try, in my case, also do a little bit of that Netflixing and playing video games.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously at some point you're like, hey, you have the 24 hours, gonna sleep like 8, so work like 8. So it's kind of a juggling and having those Excel sheet kind of a blocks in your life, and you're trying to figure out the schedule.
100%.
But talking about your band first, I think it's a very, very core of today's topics. Obviously, the podcast is important, and of course, being this fitness thing is also very important for both mental and physical health. But the band is kind of a main reason. And why I mentioned early on why this is so important, is for people to understand that coming from a country like Iran and making black metal is not just like, hey, I'm a Norwegian, I'm gonna pick up a guitar, start doing shows and songs and saying fuck Christianity, fuck this and that. Coming from Iran and playing black metal is kind of like, are you gonna kill yourself by suicide kind of a thing? So let's start with that. Playing metal, as far as I can understand, in countries like Iran is not exactly the smartest choice for a kid who wants to live a long and happy life.
Nope.
So what's the story for you? Let's start from the beginning. What made you a metal fan?
Well, I think that when I was a child, I was always very much drawn to Western cultures as a whole. Okay, so I remember when I was like 8 or 9 years old, being absolutely obsessed with wrestling at the time, which was WWF in those days. And I remember picking up on some of the theme tunes of the wrestlers and being like, oh, what's that guitar stuff? That sounds fucking great, you know, and then just feeling this adrenaline rush. And I think as a kid, I was always very much drawn to larger than life characters and beings, you know. And I think that there was a real deep attraction to that kind of stuff anyway. Now, I think I was around 13 years old that I saw Metallica on the TV. And this was with the volume off. I didn't even hear them. But something about seeing James Hetfield with his guitar, I was like...
It's just postured, kind of.
Yeah, just the image alone, there was like it took me 1 second and it was, shit, there it is. Idol. Yeah, absolutely. I was like, there it is. You know, I found the thing. And I remember being sat there glued to the TV all the way until the end. And bear in mind, this was satellite TV, which already is illegal in Iran. But I always make the joke, it's a little bit like weed in the UK. It's illegal, but everyone has it anyway, you know? Yeah. And that's, you know, we were watching obviously different, more Western types of music there, which wouldn't be allowed on actual official Iranian channels. And then when that Metallica music video came up, I sat there glued to the end. And then when the song finishes, on all these TV channels like Kerrang and Scuzz and whatever, you always get the little title that comes up at the corner.
Yeah.
And that came up and it said Metallica. So as soon as I saw that, I ran to my room. And I just wrote down Metallica. And I was like, fuck, and then I chased it up and eventually I was able to get hold of some of their albums, all bootlegs, of course, and then pretty much from there, within like 3 months of that, I was already playing guitar and composing music.
Very, very quick.
Yeah. I knew what I wanted to do in life, and I've always kind of been a bit like that,
Didn't you care that there might be some repercussions for like choices? I mean, like you mentioned, having satellite thing illegal, but everybody's okay maybe with it. But rock and roll music, metal music, not exactly the thing in Iran.
Certainly not, no. I actually have this vivid memory of our religious teacher back at the time coming up to the class and saying something to the effect of, oh, there's a band called Metallica. And by this point, I already knew them. But then he was saying that, oh yeah, this band, they released a bunch of chickens on stage, and the lead singer went on stage and just stomped on all of them and killed them all. But and I believed it at the time. I was like, oh wow, that's such a shame because I really like the music. I don't like the fact that they're killing random chickens on stage. So
weirdness, like Metallica slandering the idea that they're killing chickens.
Yeah. Well, this is a real thing. This is what you get when you got fucking crazy superstitious fanatics, that they'll just pull stories out of their ass and share it with everyone else and everyone will believe it.
Yeah.
And it took me a few years to find out that that was completely bullshit as well. Like I really had to look past that to enjoy the band. but
how to ruin a band? They're fucking stomping on animals. What, that band?
Yeah,
seriously.
And I don't want to give any black metal bands out there any fucking ideas either.
Yeah, now they're replacing pig heads with living chicken.
That's it. But so this was the thing, there's like such a stigma around performing this kind of music, that, if you're listening to Marilyn Manson, you're already a Satanist. Okay. Never mind listening to Behexen and Satanic Warmaster or Watain or all of those bands or Mayhem that I was listening to in those years while still being in Iran. Yeah. Obviously a couple of really good Finnish ones there too, we, both my friend and I, my friend L.A. from the band Lavizon Jangal, him and I kind of were in it together since the very beginning, so we started around 2009. So all of these bands that we were listening to, they are the bands that are legit satanic, or at least have those themes within the music. Yeah. And meanwhile, if you listen to Metallica or Marilyn Manson or Rammstein, you're already considered a Satanist by society around you anyway, So our thing with it was that, so I'll tell you what, I'll just break it down and I'll tell you exactly what happened. So if you are caught in Iran listening to that style of music, or enjoying it, or worse, performing it, because it's a little bit like drugs, it's one thing to consume it, it's 10 times worse to be distributing it.
Yeah, of course.
Okay? It's the exact same in Iran now, especially when it comes to metal and black metal and all of that. The punishment can be that, of course, you can get jailed for that, okay? You will definitely get harassed for it, if not by the police, by random members of society. You will get harassed for it, for like having long hair, t-shirts, and all of that. That's pretty common. You get arrested for much lighter offenses than that, even. So you can get arrested for just holding hands, walking down the street with your girlfriend. Wow. Without having like a permit that you're married or related, That's
so fucking crazy.
It's extremely medieval and backwards. And, a lot of that comes back to the fact that Iran is a theocracy since 1979, which is when the Islamic Revolution happened. Yeah. Unfortunately, one of the biggest tragedies to happen. We will get to that part, but I'm just explaining what actually happens, If they arrest you, long story short, if they arrest you and they can prove that you are somehow actually a Satanist or you are creating satanic music, especially if you're criticizing not necessarily God, but Muhammad or the supreme leader or any of their descendants, then you can get killed for that.
Yeah, so I've heard. So you were taking quite a risk listening to these bands which are already offending the whole flock. So did it ever occur to you that this might be a foolish thing to do, despite how interesting it is?
You know, that's a great question, because everyone around us was already telling us that it's a foolish idea.
Yeah.
So I was basically the only person saying, no, it's not. This is just the music that we like to play. We feel good doing this. We like to do it, you know, and if it is a risk, then, you know, you have to understand we were also quite young. Yeah. You know, I think that I would have still bought the risks at hand anyway, but I think that there was that element of no, fuck you, even if it's going to get us in danger, fuck it, we're going to do it anyway.
Were you calculating the risk, like how likely it is that if you listen to the music in your own room and like, okay, my parents won't probably tell the police, but will my schoolmates find out? How likely it is for me to get, I don't know, beaten or jailed or whatever, or we're just like, I'm gonna like just do it and see how it goes?
I don't think it was calculated at all.
You were too young for that.
Yeah, it was not calculated. Honestly, you know, it's actually kind of ironic, because sometimes I think to myself, sorry, I'm stealing all the jokes from you, man. This is usually your job.
It's good. I can just lay back. I'm gonna start tweaking.
But, you know, on a more serious note, I think that it's ironic. Why? Because sometimes I genuinely wonder if there's some kind of divine intervention. Because honestly, there's been so many times where I would have been completely close to getting just eradicated or fucked up. Yeah. Completely. And have everything just destroyed. I got very close many, many, many times, but for some reason it just never quite got there. And I was just very lucky. But no, it was never calculated. We even played, we're probably, I would say that TRIVAX is amongst fewest bands in maybe the history of the world so far that actually played live shows in Iran and outside of Iran. Yeah. You know, and then went on to like do tours and play festivals and shit. I think there's maybe like one other band who's done that at the moment that I can think of.
From the Westland, maybe? No?
Yes, Sina from the Westland. Lovely guy, by the way. He's a dear friend of mine, one of the nicest people you'll meet. I have a lot of time for him. He was actually around for a while before we were, but I don't know if they actually played in Iran.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that. I don't think they actually played a concert in Iran. There was a concert that happened in Tehran by a band called SDS, Seven Deadly Sins. This happened at the Tehran University. If I'm not mistaken, around 2005, 6, 7, around those years, mid-2000s. That happened there, and this was basically like the first of its kind, and sort of the last in a way, where they basically went on and played a bunch of covers by Death and even Deicide, but without vocals. Okay. And this caused a lot of fucking commotion, and basically all those kind of events were banned after that. Similar thing happened with TRIVAX when we played Niavaran Park in Tehran, maybe about 500-600 capacity. And we did this back in June 2011. And this was like an open air show. We lied to the organizers and said to them that we had canceled our performance at this other children's hospital. That we basically lied to them and said that we were booked to play at this children's cancer hospital to go and play for them. So that if they didn't let us play, then it would be like shame on them, like kids with cancer missed out on our music, if you don't let us play, kind of thing. True story. That actually happened. Okay. And they did actually let us play, because it was like a long day of festivals, It's the kind of shit you do just to play, Yeah. Like we wouldn't have done that if we didn't have to, Yeah. But we did actually end up playing. It was like 11:30 at night in Tehran at the same time as a moon eclipse that happens every like 72 years. And it was fucking unreal. But after that, we didn't get in so much trouble for whatever reason. I don't know. Again, we got really fucking lucky.
Yeah.
But after that, they banned all entertainment activities there. Not just like gigs and stuff, because you don't really get gigs anyway, you know? Yeah. But like no stand-up comedy, no theater, nothing. They banned all of it after we played there.
Very, very challenging to religion if people laugh. It's like laugh, punishment.
Yeah, having a good time is not halal. Let's just say that.
I can imagine that. Now, what I'm wondering is if rock music and metal music and all that stuff is forbidden by by default, why do you even have the access to guitars, amplifiers, and stuff like that? How was that manageable?
Yeah, that's a really solid point. So there's an area in Tehran called Jomhuri, and in this area they usually have like the electronic imports and stuff like that. And for years this was extremely restricted to, just like the very basics and stuff. But there was like an unofficial ESP shop that opened there. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then they were like importing some ESP, mainly LTD guitars and like a few Jacksons and stuff from I think from Indonesia, and basically in the same area a few shops popped up where they were selling T-shirts. I'll tell you a story about that in a moment, but just to answer your question quickly, I think it was a case of people basically started to portray metal as something a little bit different, So you might buy like a BC Rich Warlock, but then your purpose for buying it, you would kind of like distort the truth of it, You would say, oh, I'm buying this for like, I don't know, one thing that became really popular whilst I was still active there is people having displays of, they would call it, instead of a gig, it would be called more like a project where they would basically combine electric instruments and like traditional folk instruments. Okay. And everyone would be like sat on chairs and stuff, and it wasn't actually metal, but then that sort of, I think, made room for a more of an acceptable type of performance that then I think made more room for people to then...
So kind of like pushing boundaries little by little.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's actually more relaxed now, definitely more relaxed now than it was when I was there.
Yeah.
But what was funny, this is the point I was coming to. Okay. I've been looking forward to sharing the story here. So there were these little printing shops that kind of opened up around the place in that same area near Jomhuri in Tehran. Okay, you can literally go on Google Maps and search Jomhuri in Tehran and you'll see exactly where the area is. And there was a shop that would sell metal shirts, but then they had a separate room that was locked up. So you had to go to the shop with a referral with someone else who would say, I know this guy, I can trust him. And then they would be like, okay, they would take you around to another room, open up, and then they would start putting on these like bootleg like shirts of like metal bands and stuff, right? So it's actually pretty cool. I ended up buying
real underground stuff.
It is underground to the very definition of it, So essentially you're buying metal merch from the black market. Yeah. But why was this a funny story? That particular shop, when my friend, I think it was my friend Mehdi who took me there like, I don't know, like 14, 15 years ago, whenever it was. And the guy, I was looking through all of the different shirts. So you had, I don't know, like Opeth, Arch Enemy, like all the more generic stuff. Because those bands are quite popular in Iran.
Yeah.
And, all that kind of stuff. And I remember coming to this shirt and recognizing it's the Marduk logo, but something looked really weird about it. So I kind of pulled it out. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, aha, it's a shirt with the old Marduk logo with the inverted cross and the 666, except the logo is printed upside down. Oh. So you have a cross and 999 in front of it. Okay. I remember I was like laughing my head off at that. And then I realized they have multiple prints of the same upside down Marduk logo. And I realized that they probably did that just not to be offensive. Even within the bootleg realm.
But isn't the kind of the Christianity also the enemy of Islam, that in a way?
I don't know. Yeah, in a way, like but
this is less heresy.
Yeah, it is in a way, but I don't know. I think that was just their logic. But it was just really funny that the logo was upside down, and there were multiple shirts with that. I beat myself to this date for not buying one.
Yeah, it would be kind of calling yourself.
Yeah, like if I still had that, I'd wear it right now. Yeah. But those are the kind of circumstances, man. I mean, I remember me and my friend going to Central Parks and like listening to the mysteries out of like a Walkman or like a Sony Ericsson phone and like headbanging in the corner so that the local police that's, you know, stationed over there on the other side of the park wouldn't see us. Yeah. That's like that was like our version of going to gigs, you know, other than just like watching bootleg stuff at home. You know, but yeah,
it almost gives us like this kind of a white man guilt that here in the Nordic countries, especially in Norway, but also like places like Sweden and Finland, we're like, hey, while you were like hiding from the police with your Walkman, we have been going to the black metal shows for fucking 25 years or whatever. I mean, from that point already. Yeah. By now, obviously, it's more than that, but feels kind of weird that we're so privileged that we don't even realize like nobody's really stopping that. Now, obviously, there are some people saying like, that's not exactly true because there have been a little bit of religious things, but obviously not the same level at all. So it feels like quite weird because it's almost like you said, it's almost like from medieval days, like you're like taking this time machine, but we're really talking about the thousands. And now it's good time to go a little bit back to the history you mentioned earlier about this whole revolution, which made this whole country, in a way, kind of go back in time. So let's give people a little bit of history lesson. Iran and Persian area wasn't exactly always that, how to say, conservative. So,
well, Islamic, that's the word you're looking for.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I'll say it for you.
Yeah. But this is also partially language by everything. But let's go back in time.
Sure. Yeah.
The whole religious Islamic revolution came to be. So what I've understood, it was a more free-minded place and culture and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. How it was, I mean, you weren't basically born in 1979 or whatever, but as you know way much more about your own ex-home country's culture and history than me, obviously, let's give people a little bit of tour. How different was it before things went shit?
Well, it's a good question, and I think that bit of political and historical context is very important.
Exactly.
Not just for what happened in 1978, 1979, but for the 20 or 30 years prior to that.
Yes.
It's very important, okay? And then we'll start to involve CIA and British intelligence, because they played a big role in what happened over there.
Fill us in.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, just to give you a bit of a background on what Iran looked like in the 70s, I think most people in today's world have seen those old pictures of women just looking free and being at the beach and everything looking colorful, people looking happy. As a matter of fact, statistically, Iran was one of the top five tourist attractions in the world. In throughout 70s, on par with Casablanca at the time, which was massive. And we had a very free culture, lots of poetry, lots of cinema. Our cinema was a huge culture at the time, and great food. And, but it wasn't perfect, though. It wasn't perfect. And sometimes people mistake the fact that I use the symbol of our monarchy.
Yep. I'm just getting it for the time frame.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, sometimes people perhaps mix up the fact that I use the symbol of our monarchy as the fact that I'm a monarchist. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say that I am, but I just see that symbol of pre-Islamic revolution, Iran, as a way of rebelling against it in a very similar way that Kurunen used the Viking heritage in a way of being anti-Christian.
Yes.
So in a way, he was actually, you could maybe argue that he was more anti-Christian later on in Bathory than he was earlier on, even though...
In a way,
even though...
Kind of teenage years were replaced with more knowledge, understanding, which kind of sparked more hate.
Precisely. Yeah, absolutely. Even though obviously those first 4 albums are radical as fuck. I fucking love them for exactly that reason. But anyway. So this is exactly the case with Iran. So what happened is that you had the Shah, who was the king of the country, okay, and he was the head of the monarchy, Mohammad Reza Shah, whose father Reza Shah, who I actually have a lot more respect for. I think many Iranians probably feel that same sentiment. His father was also a king, Reza Shah, okay? And Reza Shah was actually the guy who also abolished hijab just to modernize the country. Okay. And I have a lot of respect for him for that, because it's not actually something he wanted to do, but he felt that it was necessary for the progression of Iran in the world climate. Now, in the 50s, we had a guy called Mossadegh, okay, who weirdly enough actually kind of looks like the original Nosferatu, if people Google this. But he was he did a lot of good for Iran, in a way. What happened was that he became prime minister. He realized that the British were ripping off Iran for their oil. Of course, this was happening, and the British were doing that. And basically, he cut off their access. As a result, they were not happy about this. So the British and the Americans got together and did a coup d'etat against Mossadegh. So they would have people go into the streets and basically cause violence under the name of Mossadegh, to basically say, oh, wow, look, this guy's causing violence, even though it wasn't him doing that. Okay.
So igniting a riot in a way.
Yeah, basically. And then what happened is that Mossadegh actually got, he went under arrest, under house arrest, and that's actually where he died. And then they gave most of the power then to the monarchy at the time, which was with Mohammad Reza Shah. And then he was basically sort of a Western puppet, but then 20 odd years down the line, he was then becoming too powerful for his own good. Which, by the way, if you look at it, prior to the fall of the Shah in Iran and what happened with the Islamic Revolution, there were no wars in the Middle East. It was the moment that he fell, that's when shit hit the fan. Okay, and that's where a lot of that destabilization began. You know, part of it was a little bit of a vacuum effect, but then the Iran-Iraq war came right after that. So all of this stuff happened. But one very key thing here as to that is important to mention, because that then affects us to where we are today, which is the fact that Ayatollah Khomeini, who we have on the cover of our latest album, The Great Satan.
Yeah, kind of a very corpse-like version.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's his true face. You know, we actually made him look a little prettier than he was on the inside. So Khomeini was this Islamic cleric who was also heavily tied with communism. And he was someone who basically was in exile from Iran. And he essentially, through some of his, I don't want to say sermons, but there were some tape recordings of him that went viral in the analog version of the 70s. So all of these tapes were like spreading across the country like wildfire, people copy and pasting them. Oh, look, this is what Imam said. Share it around. And then the whole country ends up getting access to these tapes. Okay, now that in itself, you can say like, well, who supported that? So but I won't go there, you know. And then basically he gets this massive following. And then around 1978, there is a huge uprising against the Shah of Iran. All of it is sparked by an event that happened in Cinema Rex. Okay, Cinema Rex is this extremely tragic thing that happened in Iran, which is basically a cinema with about maybe 600-700 people there. Okay, they're all there enjoying a film. I think it was a new premiere of a film, actually. People can watch this on, like, look it up on Wikipedia or wherever they like. And then what happened is that those people were barricaded in there and the whole cinema was set on fire.
Wow.
Okay, which Khomeini then ran on the fact that this was SAVAK's doing. SAVAK were the Shah's secret police force, okay? Later, after Khomeini actually took over, you know, so basically the Shah flees the country, there's this massive revolt, and then they do this voting thing, which I think is hilarious, you know, because it was like a mass formation psychosis at the time, you know. They do this voting thing where basically 97.5% of the country votes yes to an Islamic Republic, because then that means that Khomeini is going to be the supreme leader and he's at the forefront. He's the one who led the revolution, so now he's going to run the government, okay? An extremist, fundamentalist, religious asshole who is now going to take over the great country of Iran, which he did. And Later, by the way, it came out that it was Khomeini's own people who set the cinema on fire, by the way.
So it's all setting up
Yeah.
to gain more power.
It is, yeah. And then obviously all the stuff happened with the embassy, the US embassy, there's like films about it and stuff, I think people are maybe more familiar with what happened afterwards. But this was the lead up to it. But as a result of that, Iran has been in a state of absolute medieval Islamic madness for the last 47 years, which affects not just us who wanted to be in a metal band, but it affects women.
Yeah, who are now like put into the kitchen with windows and shit.
Yeah, and I'm sure that some of the black metal virgins and nerds watching this might actually like that a little bit because they never had a chance with women to begin with. Yeah. But
that's me thing to say, but I guess there's a little bit truth to it.
It is true, but and it's not just black metal virgins as such. Obviously there's a lot of great people within this genre, but I have seen that as well. There's these like cave dwellers, who obsess over certain ideas. Abolish the 19th Amendment and all of that. You see it all over the place right now, and part of it that reflects more so on the West, I think, than it does on a place like Iran. But it's not just the whole thing of being in a kitchen or whatever. It's the enforced hijab. It's the fact that you can't ride a bicycle in public. It's the fact that you can't attend a football stadium.
Really?
Yeah. You can't, and you can't leave the country as a woman without the official permit of a husband or a father or, a male that basically permits on your behalf. So you're basically living a half life as a woman in this country, which I actually think, I had a conversation, with, which by the way, boils my fucking blood, that an alien ideology, an alien religion that doesn't belong to Iran came and took over our lives in the way that it has done, okay? And I will not rest until that's gone. Let's make that very clear here. But I had a really interesting conversation with this Iranian taxi driver in the UK, and he made a really good point. He was saying that what they did was really clever because by women are known for their intuition, okay? Usually if you got a woman on your side and then if you're like kind of putting up with shit, she's usually the first one to turn around and say to you, wait, how much did you just spend on that? Did you just let him talk to you like that? Are you going to stand up for this? That's women's role. So when you annihilate the woman's role, then you can actually control the males easier.
No, well, that's true. Yeah.
Because
there's even saying, I'm just going to interrupt for
please, yeah.
There's even saying in Finland that, man is the head of the family, but woman is the neck that turns the head, which kind of describes that men really need the kind of support or help or even guidance from the women. Say like, don't be that fucking idiot. And some male are obviously like, oh, fuck that. We are the, control of ourselves. And we really depend a lot on women, which I think totally deserve way more than what these Islamic bullshit, governments are letting to happen. And what frustrates me so much is that, well, obviously in black metal context, we could say like, oh, let the world fucking burn. We don't give a shit. But it like you said, boils our blood that is just so fucking fucked. How unfair the whole system is and how it's basically annihilating half the population by not even giving them the right to exist and voice their opinions and all that shit. It's like, really fucking things up bad ways.
It really is, yeah. And this is the dynamic, because why do I mention that particular example? Because I think that guy was spot on about that analogy. Totally. Because if you think about it, and I don't want to take full credit, but I totally see where he's coming from. But if you think about it, so if you've got a government in place that's constantly hounding on its citizens, constantly putting oppression on them. And by the way, the oppression isn't always just what you can wear. They're fucking really incompetent people. Like, I wish it was just the fact that I didn't agree with their ideology, but they're fucking incompetent losers who are in charge of Iran, okay? And you can look at this with the whole pager thing that happened and how they're handling their finances and the fact that people are struggling so fucking much on the streets that a shop owner some years ago, like not even that long ago, literally went to the streets and set himself on fire in front of his shop that he had to close down. Okay? They are fucking incompetent, you know, so they are complete retards. Sorry to say it, but it's the truth. And I'm not even sorry to say it. Fuck off. Sorry for using the word retard, but I can't find anything more accurate for that. But the fact of the matter is that when you're oppressing people like that, it's usually the woman's role to turn around and say to the husband or the dad or whoever, hey, are you going to stand up to this? But then in a situation where the woman's voice is completely cut off, you turn around, instead of standing up to the difficulty, you turn around to the woman and say, nah, you're just a woman. Why would I listen to you? And then you keep putting up with the bullshit, okay? That's why it's important to value the role of that intuition in those circumstances.
And to put it into people in the more simplified version, that's the Sauron level shit. You know, poisoning the minds and all that bullshit is coming from this evil overlord thing. Now, what I find very, very kind of ironic once again, but also very, very fucking disturbing is that at the same time, people who are thinking about, okay, racism, when you challenge especially Islam, people always put the race card at the table like, okay, you're just saying because you're not as white as me. You're like, and like, what the fuck? Are you really defending religion who is oppressing women, who are supporting child marriages, who are ready to stone people into death by the very race card? So that is I guess, the big elephant in the room. What's your stand on it? Because obviously you are from Iran, so you're obviously probably faced a lot of these racial things, and they're so often, you know, mixed up with this kind of a narrative which is supporting, once again, this conservative governmental religious system.
Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic. Let's make one thing very clear, okay? And then this should, I think, summarize what I think pretty fucking clearly. And this is something that I have discussed with even mainstream figures in Iran. We have a Farsi version of Iblis manifestations that we started recently. Now actually bringing some of the like the really big people on like social media who are, you know, they speak to the public generally, and they create anti-government content on there. Some of them with like 500,000 followers and shit, you know, so like big people there. Yeah. And we discussed this exact same topic, and the topic I'm about to refer to is the term Islamophobia.
Yeah, well, that's very much on the table these days.
So if you look at the definition of the term phobia, it means an irrational fear of something. You know, like the Iron Maiden title, I have a phobia that something's always near.
Yeah.
Great song.
Yep, surely.
There is nothing irrational about having fear or hatred of Islam. In fact,
kind of religions in the first place.
In fact, it is entirely by choice, and it is willful, because I know it. I know what it represents, and I think that this is the part where people in the West particularly need to open their eyes to it. Ironically enough, a lot of Eastern people already know this. It's the people over here who have been, well, in many ways welcoming for so long. It's kind of fallen off the other way, I feel. There's nothing wrong with being welcoming. There's nothing wrong with at least some degree of integration. But Islam at its core is not something that is interested in integration.
Yeah, that's
integration.
Yeah, more like assimilating in a way, I guess, taking over.
It's my way or the highway.
Yeah, that's what I understood.
That's what Islamism is. Yeah. And I think that if they are truly to be a part of society here, then they need to participate in the court of opinions. So when you can't criticize something, then that's a problem. That's a big, big problem. Because you can criticize Christianity all you want, okay? And it's fun, like nothing's really gonna happen as a result.
But you can criticize it.
Yeah, you can. But criticizing Islam is a whole other story.
Yeah.
Okay? And you can talk about criticizing Judaism as well, okay? And there seems to be no problem with that. People are still criticizing that too. Interestingly enough, we're at a time where both people from left and right are kind of coming at that. But that's maybe a slightly different topic. Yeah. That's not entirely my expertise. My expertise is more so to do with Islam, because that's the world I grew up in. Yeah. So when you have a band like TRIVAX who comes out and sings about these topics, there's nothing, okay, I won't sugarcoat it. Yeah. There's nothing race related here. There's nothing racial about these lyrics. Mm-hmm. You've got me, who was born and raised in Iran. You've got Sully, our bass player, who was born and raised in Syria. He, as a matter of fact, was actually arrested for playing in a Metallica cover band when he was 18. Wow. And he was fucking tortured for it. Fuck. In a most horrendous way. I won't go into the details, but it's bad. Yeah. It's really bad what they did to him. And it infuriates me to this day. But we're coming over here and we're telling you that, look, there's nothing racist about criticizing Islam. You should be able to criticize it. We come from there and we're criticizing it. We're not against our own people for criticizing it. I'm not against Iranians when I'm criticizing the religion of Islam. Exactly. I'm against the religion of Islam when I'm criticizing it. So I think that people over here should have the exact same right. And this is where you have the problem, like, it's funny. Yesterday, I had a privilege of going off to the Fantoft Stave Church. Yeah. With, I'm going to have to name drop him, but with Mr. Tom G. Warrior. Okay. Nice. It was amazing. It was a great visit, first of all. Really fun, great time that we had up there.
It's a beautiful place too.
It's a fantastic place. Really, really. I have, there's a real vibe that you soak in the air when you're there. You feel it in your stomach, and I'm all for that. But there's an interesting moment of sort of introspection. When we were outside the church, we were talking loudly about something and just kind of having a bit of a laugh. And then this Norwegian old lady, this grandma, comes out from the inside of the church and says, "You need to be quiet. If you are going to make noise, go somewhere else." Just giving us the little eye. I was just like, okay. But then she was just like kind of staring at us and then went back inside. And me and Tom, we were kind of talking afterwards, he made a funny point. He said this place is only famous because of people like us, which is actually a good point, Yeah, totally. But I kind of thought it's interesting, because with Christianity, that's what you'll get, you'll get the old lady coming up to you, just telling you to shut the fuck up, and that's about it. With Islam, you can get killed. Yeah. It's a totally different story.
That's what I want to ask you. Are you never been afraid that when you speak so openly, not only with your band, but also with your podcast, so there's a wide reach, both on stage, both through the music, and of course with the podcast, are you ever afraid that someone might actually, do some violence towards you or your closest ones? Are you ever afraid of being silenced even?
It's a great question. And there's a couple of sides to that. Yes, I have absolutely thought about it before. And I particularly started to think it from around the time we released the Azrael music video a couple of years ago, because that went viral on YouTube. It's like getting very close to like 1 million views on there now, which I think in the context of black metal, it might have outgrown pretty much, I think, most, if not every band, maybe in the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah. Again, in the context of black metal, and I'm not saying, we're bigger than those bands. It's not about that. Just but video. It's to put it in a context that a lot of people have seen that, including like people who take that faith really fucking seriously, And this is the thing as well that I do want to clarify. I don't want to like upset like your day-to-day Muslims, but it's the Islamists that I have a problem with. Yeah.
All different story. What people need to also understand.
But also the problem with that is that the Islamists are the quote-unquote good Muslims in a way. Why? Because they're the ones that actually follow the book to the T. Mm-hmm. Now, the actual good Muslims are the ones that follow it, but aren't like fundamentalists about it. And they're more likely to integrate with normal world. I have far more respect for those kind of people for that reason, okay? Yeah. I'll still might challenge them on their ideas, but but I have a little bit more respect.
Yeah, you can kind of coexist with them,
Yeah.
even if you disagree.
Just as a little bracket, why do I say this? Because you always get this argument of, whenever there's like something on the news where they've committed something, it's always like, oh, those are the bad Muslims, and then you got the good Muslims here that just want to go about their lives. I actually think that is true, but the definition should be the other way around, purely because the bad Muslims are actually the ones that really fully went all the way to the instructions of their holy book. Okay? That's a very important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's the kind of a crusade kind of a shit. Oh, okay, the Bible says this. Yeah. We need to kill those infidels and we need to tear down their beach and all that shit. Like, because it's a God's will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always the God's will.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's man sort of disguising his own will as God's.
Yeah, it's
really
like keeping an excuse of, oh, why did you beat your women? I had this inner voice. I call it God, so I get to beat women down.
Well, you say, why did you beat your women? I had the voice of God. In the Quran, it specifically permits men to beat up women. Yes.
That's fucking crazy.
Look up, I think it's verse, I'll have to remember exactly. But if you just Google Islam verse on beating women,
that will be found.
It's there. It's right there in the book, where it says, if a woman is disobedient in the context of a relationship, which the simple fact that you even have to discuss a human being being disobedient, that's not an equal playing field. Yeah. So you have to understand that the fact that that's even there is pretty fucked up. But then it goes on to say that at first you stop sleeping with them. So you like kick them out of the bedroom, stop shagging. And then if they carry on disobeying you, then you get to smack them. Allah gives you permit to slap your wife or whatever.
Nice person.
Yeah. Well, this is the religion, and people can draw their own conclusions whether that's a good thing or not, But just coming back into it, you asked me if I'm afraid about stuff like that. Since that video went viral, I have been very sort of wary of stuff happening, but also at the same time, the same spirit of rebellion, irregardless of outcomes, resides within us, especially me personally, And I know this sounds perhaps unrelatable to some people who just want to live their lives. I'm never content with that alone, and I do feel like I have a mission. And there's a lot that's gone into me even being in the position that I am where I am today, okay? People might just see us and think, oh, it's a black metal band or whatever. I think that this is far bigger than that. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than all of us. And yes, I do get concerned with stuff like that. And I try to be careful to the extent of like just being cautious, not so much what I say. I'm never going to fucking censor what I say. But at the same time, interestingly enough, this is in line with actually some of their own ideology, I don't think I'm afraid of being a martyr for the truth either. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
If it gets you killed, you knew that you were doing the right thing, kind of a mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to get killed. I'm someone who actually...
I don't feel like you have a death wish, but...
I don't. No. I love, least black metal talk ever, maybe. I don't care. I love living life.
Yeah.
I love living life. I like having a good time. I like friendships. I like spending time with my cats. I like spending time with my partner. I like playing music with my band. And even though we look like we're about to kill someone on stage, that's just us exercising the shadow side of our beings. Yeah. I'm someone who's very much for life in that regards. But that's why I feel like I have to rise up against this bullshit, and
definitely.
And if it takes me in the process, I'm not scared. Yeah. I'm not scared of fucking nobody or nothing.
That's kind of a healthy way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Which takes us, before we gotta go and all, talking about a little bit of cancel culture, because it's always targeting, okay, now with that mentioned this racial thing and this, like, okay, since you're anti-Islam, so you must be also racist, therefore we must cancel you, even if they probably should cancel the whole religion, which is also so very aggressive towards women and all that stuff. So have you ever got into this crossfire, like where you're like targeted both at the religion and also the cancel culture, who's so eager to put all these sketchy black metal bands into, I don't know, some kind of a prison or whatever?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, really. I don't think TRIVAX has ever been directly targeted by anything like that. But just because I think, hopefully, if you are wanting to target someone, at least you do some research. That's why you want to target them, not just targeting them for the sake of it. And I think if you target, if you listen to this full interview, I think this is pretty definitive on like where I stand on stuff,
Very much.
And I don't think that these are stuff that would grant for any kind of cancellation unless you're literally an Islamist yourself and you literally think gays should be executed and women should be beaten up. And unless you think that, then I don't think there's any reason to cancel us.
I'm asking this because, once again, this is kind of a walking on eggshells kind of thing, but
let's do it.
If there's like say some white guy, especially with the hair that do as I have, I've been obviously called Nazi just because I have short hair and all, or no hair. But I mean, if as I would say as a white guy or any guy from Finland, Sweden, Norway, whatever, would say these anti-Islamistic things, the first thing they will notice is like, okay, you're attacking a bunch of colored people. They don't give a shit if it's about attacking religion. So they're like mixing two different things once again because it supports their own ideology or whatever. So that's why I was asking, like, do you get a free pass because you are from Iran with your challenging the religion, or is that people are confused like what the fuck we should do?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you this. This is something that's actually much more deeply rooted than just those people having those arguments or throwing around phrases like that. I think this happens because I think European governments in particular have absolutely failed their people. Okay, why do I say that? Because in the case of something like Islam, there has to be a degree of modernization and, more importantly, integration. And there's been none of that. There's been absolutely none of that. It's just, we accept you exactly as you are kind of thing, And it's no wonder why people are angry. No wonder people are pissed off because, it's a difficult and challenging conversation to have, but you have to like go back multiple steps. Well, how did we even end up in this place to begin with? All right. And again, for example, for me, when I came to the UK, I was brought up being told that if you go somewhere as a guest, you treat it like your own home, if not better than your own home. Okay. And you, like let's say as a kid, when you're in school and you go to like someone's house, and if that family has their own traditions or their own food or whatever, you sit down with them and you treat them as they are. Which, by the way, reflecting on Persian heritage, this is exactly what Cyrus the Great did. Okay, he was one of the first conveyors of human rights in history ever. And he would always allow for the people that they conquered to maintain their own culture and heritage and their own traditions, even after becoming a part of Persia or the Persian Empire. And I think that that's a mindset that has been missing, maybe I independently took that approach, but there has to be some steps, or at least some more steps than there has been to, hey, if you're going to come here, you need to at least mix with people. You need to, at the very minimum, be able to speak the language of your fucking locals, or at least even speak English. Yeah. If it's in Norway, at least speak English, bro. Come on, please. Yeah. Is that so fucking hard? Yeah. And I think that causes a lot of problem because then that creates resentment in the people that are already there. So what that does, it creates more tension and destabilization, by the way, which I think is particularly very dangerous because that's the sort of thing that will lead to that whole system collapsing eventually, and then thus being taken over by maybe a more centralized system. So then you can question whether if it's actually incompetence or something that's done entirely deliberately.
That's a very good question. Now, we've been here quite some time, and obviously something is happening at Build the Gates where we have to eventually be. Before we go, however, I want a little bit talk about TRIVAX music because you have the new album, Great Satan, out. And obviously you can hear certain, what we would say, generalizing once again, Middle Eastern in terms of how things sound, while the music itself is kind of a westernized combination of black and death metal. Maybe not so much of the black metal, death metal side, sorry, but there is this why people like to box you in black death metal.
Yeah.
If it's kind of a more coming from the ideological side of black metal. What is your definition? What kind of fans you do TRIVAX music for?
Oh, that's a great question. It's quite relevant because I don't think we fit into any of the labels, to be honest with you. So I have a very, just for me personally, I have a very honest songwriting style. And in terms of the music that I listen to, it's extremely broad. You can talk about everything from Iranian folk music to 70s fucking synthesizer music to like 80s goth rock to the 90s death metal to the 2000s. I don't know what's in 2000s, but like all the other stuff, that's my taste in music is extremely broad and varied. So when it comes to creating music, I just write what's honest. I know that's maybe a vague answer, but I think it will make sense and you'll kind of find a definitive point by listening to the records. In the case of The Great Satan, if you listen to that, every song sounds like a different subgenre.
Yeah, there are quite a variety of things while still keeping true to the core.
Exactly. And then there's this like invisible thread that kind of ties it all together, whether it's conceptually or like the energy of the band or that sort of aggression, that electric aggression that exists in TRIVAX that I think people see and feel a lot more when we play live. So for me, I'm honestly at that point where labels don't really matter that much, and I've always identified with black metal purely because that's the music style and the genre that got me to really think about music in a different level, that gave me the courage that, you can shit all over this religion all you want and it's totally fine. And not only you can shit on something, but you can also pursue spirituality within this subgenre as well, which I think is fascinating. There's no other music genre out there in the world that I can say does what black metal does. Having said that, I also feel like as a genre, like a label that you find on a CD at like a record store, I do kind of feel like TRIVAX has in some ways made the black metal term redundant because of the sonic progression that we have and have had over the years. I think we just have our own sound, really. And the thing is as well, I think we're also very unpredictable because if you listen to the next TRIVAX album that's not out yet, but it will be eventually, if you listen to that, it's going to sound totally different to what you hear on The Great Satan. And I think that's one of the best things of the band, like life's too short to find a formula and just keep ripping it off and put out products. I like to make songs that I like to play. Well, that's
always a good way to motivate one yourself. But I got to mention this. I don't know if you agree or not, but kind of goes beyond the point because obviously everybody and their aunts have their own opinions when they hear the music. What I noticed when I was spinning it a few times through and making mental notes, like what this is bringing to my mind, there was one band that in particular kind of came to my mind. So I made it, like wrote down before, doing the review, which is obviously out way before this interview.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was checking out Metal Archives, what Metal Archives has to do, what they say about it. Because I'm anyway taking the links, to the Metal Archive side, the band side.
Sure.
Adding the links as this interview as well.
Detective Rauta.
Yeah. And then there was it. At the similar artist tab, have you checked out what are you most referred to? Like for fans of?
Not for years. I remember in like 2013 checking that, but probably not for a while.
Behemoth. And that's okay. Funny because actually the one band that came to my mind when I was spinning through the album was like kind of a modern, but I'm not saying it's exactly the same, obviously. But I'm saying you have some kind of maybe it's totally unconscious, subconscious, not unconscious.
Yeah.
Subconscious thing, but I mean, there are similarities. So if I was this PR person, like writing like for which kind of fans this is meant, and then I realized when we're talking about this aggressiveness towards religion, okay, Behemoth is all about Catholicism and all that stuff, ripping Bibles on stage and all that stuff. Then they're like, maybe you are indeed kind of like brothers from another mother without even realizing it yourself. So, but do you see or hear this by yourself when you're like doing music and listening to your album before it goes into that printing bland and figuring out like I have these similarities?
Yeah.
Or is it something that you're totally kind of clueless of?
It's a funny one. I've heard that before. Like one of the comments that really made me laugh on the Azrael video was like, "Who's been sending the Behemoth CDs to Iran?" You know, that just really made me laugh for some reason. I haven't actively listened to them for quite a few years now, you know, but they were a big influence when I was in Iran. But at the time, I made a different style of music, so
I don't. Behemoth was different back then.
They were. I remember listening to their live at the Arena of Aeon, their 2008 live sort of CD from Paris. And that fucking album, like for a live album, was unreal. They were like on a different level back then. And I think people kind of forget now because of a lot of stuff that's been said and done on social media and what maybe some of the last couple of albums sound like, but they really fucking had a next level energy and intensity. I obviously never got to see them in person in those years because I was still back home.
Yeah.
But and actually the first record of theirs I discovered was Pandemonic Incantations anyway, which is still a great record from 99. I listened to that quite a lot back then before discovering the more black and death metal stuff that they did later. But if you were to weigh their stuff against, like, for example, The Great Satan, I don't think there's that much similarities personally.
Similarity in, like, especially on more detailed levels. But if I had to recommend, like, if someone was asking me, so what's TRIVAX like? And I would just like, okay, it's black metal. Can you be a little bit more specific? Are we talking about Persian or are we talking about Bathory? Then I would be like, okay, have you been checking out Behemoth 2020 stuff? Oh, yeah, I like them, the kind of stuff. And of course, because they're probably by numbers. Now, the biggest black metal thing, I think it could work for like a benefit. Like, hey, if you like that stuff, why not check out you?
Sure. No, listen, they have absolutely, like, without question, blown off the doors for extreme metal. I think that, and people might not like that, but you will not find, you will not find many other bands in extreme metal who have gone as far as those guys have, especially coming from Poland of all places. Yeah. That's a very impressive feat in itself. But
considering how black metal was so long time and still is defined by the Norway's history and all that stuff.
And, the fact that I can talk about that band easily because I don't know if they're that direct of an influence on what TRIVAX does nowadays, but I can also give respects and give credit where it's due, which is the case that you will not find many other extreme metal bands who have played and supported Slayer, Slipknot multiple times, playing all those shows that they have, the headline tour that they just did with Satyricon and Rotting Cries, getting like 4,000 capacity arenas filled with that style of music. I think that is extremely powerful. On the other side, I do feel like this is where I'll tie the knot for you nicely, and I hope people are making notes of this. People ask Behemoth quite regularly. I know Nurgle gets this comment a lot on like social media and different places. You're always criticizing Christianity. Why don't you say the same about Islam? Well, here's my answer. This is where TRIVAX comes in. This is the shit that we have to deal with back home. Let us handle it. Yeah,
well, fair point. Considering that, Behemoth had to deal quite a bit of conservative Christianity in Poland and still do legal-wise and other. But that's entirely a different topic. And obviously we have a lot of stuff that we could go on with Cheyenne for hours. But unfortunately, time is always against us and there will always be a time for sequel. Now we will let you people digest what we just went through for about an hour or so, I'm guessing. And meanwhile, you're digesting all this stuff, and when you need a break, spin that Great Satan and then go back to the whole discography thing with the stuff. You will obviously find the links to the music and relevant sites, social media and whatnot in the description box. So I have made it very easy for you to just click, or in case you're watching through television, grab your smart device and find yourself more information. And obviously, I hope you like it. And as always, I say, if you like it, go buy it. And when you get the chance to see these guys live, which unfortunately I have not yet had the possibility,
We'll have to make up for that.
do it. And hopefully we will see you on
My man, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time. This is Rauta. This is Beyond the Cage 2025. And obviously, Cheyenne TRIVAX and Iblis Manifestations. And by the way, check out the podcast. And also, if you are into fitness, that thing too. There's a lot for you to check out, but I'm sure you will find the way and time and all that stuff. And in case you don't, well, then bye.
Adios.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Photos.
That was
before
good.
We go.
Let's do it.
Like I said, we could have been talking for hours, but we need to be eventually at Greek Holland for gigs and stuff, and also grab some food. And
You do an introduction reel as well.